Well, welcome everyone to this pilot episode of our first podcast on teaching and learning at St. Andrews College. I'm joined today by two special guests to talk about how generative AI is currently being used in classrooms and to get their assessment of what the future of this landscape might look like. Steve Rush is the Director of IT Strategies here at the school, and Owen Ramon is a grade 10 student who has spent the last 6 years in SAC's one-to-one laptop environment and has a deep interest in technological advancement and the future of AI. Thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here.
So for the first question, I'm going to throw this over to Steve. How is AI currently being used in the school here at St. Andrews, and what are the most common AI tools or systems that are integrated into education today?
So we're using, everyone's using the free version of ChatGPT. We've tried 4 licenses of Copilot. We're kind of struggling with that. We've really kind of banked for this year on Flint K-12. And in Flint, it's a very affordable educational platform for teachers to really have like an AI LMS. And so we've got all of our students, like 680, and our teachers in it. They've already built 384 activities, and we have over 2,800 sessions that have been built by students that teachers can review. And then we also, everybody's finding little gems. And so some people are using some graphical stuff. Canvas is being used. And then I'm using Otter right now to record my classes in a Harkness style seminar discussion. And so there's lots of little bright spots and teachers exploring, their favorite kind of latest AI tool.
That's great. Sounds like it's starting to catch on.
But I mean,
people are exploring.
We're really encouraging that. Like for this year, it's like fail often, fail cheaply. Like don't ask for a huge investment. Try things out and don't really have too high expectations. We always say this is the worst AI you'll ever use. And so you have an idea, you have a dream, you have something you want to do. And if it doesn't, that doesn't mean it never will. Just maybe it's not the right tool, or maybe you didn't give it the right prompt or the right rules. If you built an app, like there's other reasons, So yeah, really encouraging exploring both personally and professionally, I think is key, that people do find some part of their personal life where they find it advantageous and valuable, and not focus only on the classroom, because we just have to make this part of the way we think about teaching and learning. So if a teacher's trying to learn, let's say, a new medical diagnosis, well, great, use the AI to learn about that for an elderly parent or yourself or a child or something. But it's really the opportunity to be lifelong learners, and not just focus on only your class.
Okay, so if the encouragement is for teachers to be experimenting in the classroom, also outside of the classroom, and I'm wondering, how has AI impacted your learning experience in school? And maybe you could give a couple of examples of how it's helped and challenged you.
Yeah. So as Mr. Rush said, I have been using a bunch of different AI tools in the classroom. Specifically in science, we've been using Flint AI, as he's mentioned. It's been pretty decent so far. It has its weaknesses, but it has been really good for reviewing key concepts before test. The way I like to think of AI is I like to use it as a way to gather information and find data from across the web, from textbooks that I import and other things like that. So it is really good at handling large data sets, but then the problems start to arise when you get into the humanities, and it becomes really easy to find yourself accidentally plagiarizing and just stealing the AI's thoughts as your own.
So I'm going to come back to the ethics in a minute. You can hold that thought, but that makes me a little bit curious. So are you finding that teachers are bringing AI into the classroom, or are you, just because you're naturally interested in it, are you sort of bringing that to your learning?
And I'd say it's been mostly myself doing it. Science has been the main subject where I've seen teachers pushing for integration. I've seen other lower level stuff, like in math, they had us go on to ChatGPT and pull up, I forget what exactly it was, something like questions, but it wasn't really a deep usage of AI. It really just kind of felt like we had to throw it in somewhere. So it was pretty surface level.
Okay. So this leads me actually into my next question quite naturally. So, Steve, I'm wondering how are educators, specifically here in our context at St. Andrews, and staff being trained to effectively integrate AI into their teaching methods? Like, what's the training, or how are we as a group of educators exploring it in a meaningful and deliberate way?
Mm-hmm. So I think as you try to, encourage and the integration of new technologies into traditional classrooms, there's always a varied response. And so I always like the model where you have the settling the West. So you have the explorers and the pioneers, the settlers and the town dwellers. And so when you think of it that way, it's not like there's one size fits all. So, some teachers are keen to explore and they're doing it on their own. Others are waiting for a great, bright spot from someone else. So they get inspired by a colleague in the department, then they're willing to try it, and so on. And so, these things take years to do. So what we've done so far is really encourage the personal use, encourage people to try things out and not, worry about the outcome too much. We've done some PD on Flint early in August. So we adopted Flint for this year. Like Flint only came out in the summer of 23. ChatGPT is the fall of 22. Flint comes out the summer of 23. We pilot it in the spring of 24. We adopt it. And for this 24-25 school year, we're using it. We've licensed all our teachers and the students. And so we did some PD then. We just said, quick and dirty, create a quick activity, see that you can see the transcript. And so we encourage our teachers to do one activity in one unit this year. Like that was the only ask, a really small bar. We asked everyone to do it. That includes the town dwellers, who are pretty reluctant. We had an expert, Eric Hudson, come visit the school. Our board was very interested in it. And so we invited him to talk to the board. Then we thought, hey, let's make it a whole day. And so he did a keynote hour presentation, was really inspiring people. For the next 2 weeks, people every day came to me and said that they took something away or encouraged them to try it. And so from the town dweller to the settlers, it's like people are ready to give it a go. And then he did individual sessions with teachers on our integration committee, and they did a board presentation. So that was a really good day having an expert here who's seeing lots of, great exemplars at other schools. Last summer, myself and 3 other colleagues went to the Summer Institute of AI at Lakefield College School. They're doing it again this year, and they've asked schools to bring larger contingents. We already have 6 people signed up, hoping for 8, and then maybe a few administrators. So, and then we did some other Flint PD to refresh it kind of in January.
So it's for someone who's been around a while, there's a pattern and a proven successful pattern here. We kind of did this when we brought OneNote into the school. There was a year where it was introduced, a couple of people tried it out. If you wanted to play around, then there was a couple of years of exploring and sharing, and then people really started to see the benefits of it in terms of organizing a course and the benefit for the boys in terms of their learning. So it seems like you're actually applying a proven strategy that has worked in the past. I would suggest that maybe the tricky part is that this is moving so quickly. In the past, it's been a couple of years of rollout of these kinds of things. There seems to be a little bit more positive pressure to move more quickly. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, to kind of just play on that. Like at the time you felt like, well, if we're going to go laptop and then we're thinking going tablet and having touch and ink, input. And so then it was like, oh, OneNote's really good for the stylus experience. So, hey, when you think of it, adopt it. You can choose to adopt it, to choose when to integrate it. AI is like, as I said earlier, it's just arrived. It's here. Students are using it for good or ill. And so we kind of got to get in the game. It's not like something we can choose to adopt at a later date. It's happening. And I think we have an obligation as educators to become informed, use it ourselves, test it out, and then give some guidance and direction to our students, because they don't have it all figured out, despite what people say. They may be using it a lot, but doesn't mean they know how to use it well and purposefully. So it's important that teachers are giving some guidance, just like they do in their subject areas.
That's great. So I'm just curious if you can share a couple success stories where AI has truly made a difference in student outcomes.
Yeah. So for just individually, like it's kind of unique. I'm an administrator, and I'm also a classroom teacher. It's a model we have here. All of our admins teach a class. And so, I use, as Owen alluded, I use it for review. I love the idea of building apps where you can have actual, very curated content for students to use. So, it's going to be on task. They can, practice multiple choice questions before content quiz. They can, right now I'm building a unit where I take my essay organizer, I take my rubric for writing, and I'm going to hopefully build it all into Flint. I do it that way. The other big one is I do Harkness style teaching, where we have every month we have an assessed discussion in the class, where it's like a seminar. Kids are responsible for some reading material. It's a discussion. They've got to listen to each other and respond. So it's that Harkness style. And it used to be so torturous as a teacher, trying to take notes, trying to do the spider graph where you've got, the weight of who's talking when. And it was such I used to get burned out at the end of these hours. I feel I worked harder than the kids. And now I use Otter AI. It records the whole transcript. It then weights how much students speak. And then it summarizes the class. So it's like normally in the past, I would have appointed a student to take the important notes down as in addition to mine, and then try to give the kids some notes back. This does all that. So it's been really incredible. So as I was assessing those discussions, I could listen to the boy's voice and go back, and it was, again, not that it's easy. It just really gave, I thought, a fuller picture of what happened. And it was cool to have that summary at the end, and then I share it with the kids so they can go back to it themselves.
Yeah, and then the generation aspect of recording, like what it can generate, is so powerful for a teacher who's always looking for evidence, right? We're always mining for evidence, and the recording of it can often take away the time from the actual instruction. Yeah. So it's interesting to hear you mention some of the things that are helping on your side. Oh, and I'm interested, are there AI tools or systems at school that you're finding particularly useful or interesting, and maybe what you like about those?
Yeah. I'm currently using a whole bunch of them. Recently, I've started preferring the AI tools that have been developed by Google, just because they're starting to have such a deep integration with the rest of the Google products. I'm seeing Gemini results in Google Chrome. I have an Android phone, so I have access to it there, and it's just become so convenient for me to use Gemini over other applications that it's the one I'm starting to lean towards more. One of the ones that I'm just experimenting with now, as it's only just come out at the time of recording, is the beginnings of the integration of Google's Project Astra into Gemini Live, which is an expanded multimodality for AI, where you're giving it now, where you started with ChatGPT and how it had, you would give it text and it would give you a text output. You then kind of moved into, you could give it audio and it would give text output, some audio. You're starting to see photos come in and out now. But what Astra is videos, which is kind of the next step. So what I've been playing around with is having the ability to share my screen with the AI. And I used it recently for prepping for a math test. It was able to see the questions and guide me through them while I was working on them. It's kind of similar to just having a tutor, except it was there whenever I wanted to use it.
So, sorry, clarifying question. So, it's watching your screen, and so what application are you working in when it's watching you? Are you handwriting with a stylus in OneNote or?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. My teacher had given a review worksheet in OneNote, so I had pulled that into my personal notebook and was working on that, and it was able to interpret my objectively terrible handwriting pretty well. It didn't. It figured it out. OneNote is already pretty good with that, but I wasn't sure how it would fare, being so new. So I've been playing around with that one recently. I've also used Notebook LM, which is another Google product for the humanities subjects specifically. I've been able to use it in my history class, where there's a whole lot of content and a whole lot of just general stuff that needs to be known. I've been able to export my OneNote, the entire unit, from OneNote as a PDF, and I would upload that with all my notes to Notebook LM. And then what I could do from there is generate a 15-minute podcast between two speakers discussing all the topics from my notes. So I was using that before my tests. On my break, in my headphones, doing a last-minute review session with that. But then you can also ask it questions, and it will give you answers grounded in the text and information that you fed it.
That's a really creative usage. And for me as a teacher, I mean, my brain automatically goes to the opportunity to what we would call differentiate. So, no two people learn in the same way or have the same preferences when it comes to how they take in information. So the fact that what you're doing is essentially you're personalizing your learning, right? You're recreating what you've done in class in a way that either, is convenient or speaks to you better or just provides you with another layer and is allowing you to, review in the way that you prefer. That's really quite cool.
Yeah, it's been really nice. I've found myself able to kind of review. In my mind, I've been able to review better than I have been before, just because I have access to this information in different formats. And when you're able to read something and then listen to something similar and then see a third different thing all under the same topic, it really helps to solidify your understanding.
That makes sense to me. We touched on the ethics question a little while ago, and you did mention the plagiarism word. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about, and what your perceptions are about your perceptions of your peers in terms of, the ethics of using AI, and where kids are. You're uploading your own notes. Obviously, there's no issue there in terms of what you are giving to the apps that you're using, and also for the output, that's your work. But I'm curious to know what your thinking is on the ethics side.
I haven't personally used AI as an aid on many projects. I've used them more so to prepare for tests and things like that. But I do know a significant number of my peers who have been using it as oh, I forgot this project was due. Let me use AI and get it done in 15 minutes because it's due tomorrow type thing. And they all know that it's plagiarism and that it's cheating, but it's almost as if they think of it as a lesser form of cheating. I'm not sure why. Maybe just because it's not an actual human that I'm taking this work from. It's a bot, and they've taken to using it just everywhere, really. And yeah.
So it sounds like maybe we need to open up more discussion opportunities, more conversations about
Yeah, for sure.
how when we use AI potentially, or when we give credit for the things that we are using. Sometimes it's really just a matter of giving credit and being open about how AI can be used effectively and when, and just maybe owning what is our own thinking versus where we've had a conversation with AI, and not vilify it. It doesn't need to be vilified. It's not this big, doesn't have to be this big negative space, but maybe there's a communication piece that needs to start happening between students and teachers.
Yeah, that would probably be good. I know in last year in my science class, the teacher was kind of used infrequently, but there was, I forget what they called it, AI meter or something like that, and it was a 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending on how much AI you were allowed to use in the project. Right? A 4 would be, I want this to be completely AI generated. A 1 would be, I don't want you using it at all. Or actually, it might have been a 0. But that was kind of an interesting idea to me, just because it gives kids a sense of what you're actually looking for. And it lays out clearly exactly what the expectations are.
And some of our teachers use a lane 1, lane 2 idea that we got from Lakefield last year. Like lane 1 is just like no AI, going to write the essay in class. And lane 2 is like, go wild, use all the AI you want to generate ideas, thesis statements, look for whatever it might be. That's what doing. I think if I could just call it, the ethical part of this is like, I think we all want to, build gritty, knowledgeable and inspired students who find both their talents and things they're passionate about. I think the real danger here of students taking the easy way out, or we call it friction sometimes, like they can avoid the friction and really abdicate and sabotage themselves. And so with my grade 12 class, who are going off to university, it's like, you guys, I haven't learned with these tools. So you've got to decide when this is a benefit to you as a young learner trying to master new fields of study. And so I think there's, real, there's an opportunity, as Owen was talking about, in terms of learning and reviewing and making sure, but then this opportunity to do assignments and to escape doing assignments is something, we really need to think about as teachers. Again, we have to address it now. It's happening now. And you can't be naive and pretend like it's not. And it might only be, 3 or 4 kids in your class, but that's a significant number, so already we have to deal with it.
Really? Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So let's talk a little bit about the future. Steve, I'm wondering how you envision AI evolving in the next few years in schools, and if there's specific areas that you see it having a particularly strong impact.
Yeah. And just to move into that, one of the things is the idea that if some students, often the better students, are very nervous about being accused of using AI in assignments. They won't even use it, but then they're not then benefiting it from someone who may be using it in a beneficial way. So, that's not healthy either. So as far as the kind of what I'm seeing is when I first was really started researching this in the winter of 22, 23, after ChatGPT been out for a bit, at first it just seemed like this quick response thing and getting answers didn't excite me. And so in conversation with my son, who's doing some work in AI, he was talking about generative AI and GPTs and the idea of building apps. And that really got me excited. Then he recommended the founder of the Khan Academy, did a TED talk about, kind of revolutionizing education, that the best way to learn is with an expert in the field, one-on-one. Independent private schools have small classrooms that you're reducing the ratio of students to teachers. So the ultimate thing is, as Owen's already alluded to, is just having that private tutor helping him with his study for his math. And so, with ChatGPT Plus, you could build your own app, but then originally you couldn't share with anyone who wasn't also on Plus. But then you couldn't see what they did, so you couldn't see the session. And so, but that idea of taking and leveraging what teachers have cultivated in terms of their expertise, the content they've curated, the lesson process learning that they've developed, to be able to bottle that into an application that they can then share with their students to leverage their time in class. So great teachers on an essay would conference with their students. But if the rules for writing a thesis could be built into the AI, and if there could be an activity where students are simultaneously building their thesis, getting feedback like they would from their teacher, to me, that's what's exciting. And I've been trying this. It's kind of hit and miss right now. It's not perfect. But the idea that the AI, as it improves, is going to allow one-on-one, and as you alluded to, personalized education, I think is like awe-inspiring. We're not there yet, but there are tools that, do leverage that idea. I think the Khan Academy is trying to build it in with its Khan Amico. Here, a young man has just already found the new offering from Google allows him to do that. And there's certainly teachers trying to do that with their, favorite pet lessons, and build them in. So yeah, that idea of a teaching assistant who leverages the teacher and can scaffold the lessons the way they would individually is what I find really exciting. That's the holy grail.
That's exciting. A teacher assistant, what a dream! Mm-hmm. I like it. Okay, so on the same note, in terms of the future, Owen, how do you think AI is going to impact your future career? Do you think AI skills are going to be important to the kinds of jobs that you want?
I mean, I do think that AI is going to be the future, and I think it's going to be a major. It's going to be a major benefit to you if you're able to use AI or not. I'm not sure where I heard this from. I believe it was one of my teachers, but they said something along the lines of the people who are going to get the jobs in the future are not the people who can do the stuff themselves and can, get things done without AI. The people who are going to get the jobs are the people who are able to use it effectively to make them more productive than those people who aren't using it. And I really think that, if you're able to use AI and use it effectively and generate good prompts and actually have it doing what you want it to do, you're going to have a major leg up in your career in the future.
And it's interesting because, the generating prompts that work and that bring about, the results that you want, that in itself is a skill and a thinking process, right? It can be actually pretty heavy lifting, and it does take a lot of work to refine and try again and refine and refine and refine. So, I think sometimes you hear people who are worried that it's going to remove, the thinking from learning. But in fact, if you kind of look at it that way, it's it's quite the opposite. It's just a different, it's just a different mode of thinking. It's just a different kind of task, but it's tough. It's not easy.
No, yeah. I see some kids struggling with getting it to do what they want, and they get frustrated because they see the kid beside them typing in a couple sentences and getting graphs and data points out of it, and then they're stuck just getting text answers and not getting what they want.
Gotta work for it, I guess. Yep.
Yeah, so I think I don't like the term artificial intelligence. Like, obviously we've created a non-humanoid intelligence, so it is artificial, it's not human. But I really like the term co-intelligence by Elon Musk has a book with that title. Love that idea. And then, assisted intelligence. I like those terms because I do see it as a partnership, and the way, Owen, really kind of imagined the world where, people with subject specific knowledge, they're an engineer, they don't have to build bridges, roads, whatever, new equipment and machinery. They have all that expertise, and then they leverage and use the AI to produce, to do, whether it's modeling or testing or, some instruction that then allow it to build and do the first prototype. And like, that's leveraging, and it's a co-intelligence that can, make humans produce potentially better, safer, faster products more efficiently. And that's what I think. So I want to, the idea that we don't have to know stuff, I think is just completely mistaken. And, I think it's also discouraging for young students to hear that, as opposed to the fact that, they've got to become experts in their area and then leverage the AI. And that's, kind of the knowledge worker of the future that's going to be very successful.
I think that what you just said would be comforting to teachers who are concerned that they're going to be obsolete. So keep that one in mind. Okay, so let's just think a little bit about parents, because that's the audience that we're trying to reach with this particular podcast. So with parents in mind, a question for both or either of you, what do you think are the most important things that parents should know about AI in schools, and how can they support their kids in navigating this new landscape responsibly?
I really think that, some parents are going to come home from work and see their kid working on an assignment with AI and completely freak out. Like, what are you doing? That's cheating. You can't be doing that. I think it's really important for parents to understand that this is kind of where the future of education is going at this point. And as long as they're using it responsibly and in a way that's not just scraping the thoughts for your own, it can actually be a good thing that your kid is using AI to assist them with their work.
So it sounds like you recommend parents stay open-minded.
Yes.
Maybe ask questions rather than reacting. Engage in conversations, what I'm saying. Have conversations with your kid about how they are using AI.
I think it's important that parents use it themselves, see the value of it, see the benefit of it, and see the weaknesses of it. And then, other kids are using it, but the guidance I think they need to provide is that students need to protect their own learning, not abdicate it, and that they need to coach their kids on, how to use it effectively. And to do that, as Owen just, alluded to earlier, like this new tool comes out from Google like yesterday, Claude AI just announced 2 days ago, they're going to do a Claude education and really try to focus their AI development on learning, to the neophyte, the apprentice, the the student that's trying to acquire and become an expert and a master in a field, they're going to actually be, trying to craft the AI to be, and so, it's changing all the time. So parents can't, out of the gate say it's not good for you or it's amazing for you. Like, it's evolving, participating in that lifelong learning, but their children are going to be a world that, we didn't have.
I think it, as with everything in education, it's best when it's a partnership, right? A partnership between the school, the teacher, the parents, the students, and when everybody is, sort of leaning in, to use maybe a bit of a tired phrase, but rather than being afraid or, putting up walls, just being open to having these conversations and learning something new. I know myself, I've learned lots from you, Owen, always bringing new things into my orbit and sharing what you're trying. It's, but sometimes it is scary. As a parent myself, and feeling like the world is changing really, really quickly, and it is a little bit hard to keep up. I find if I just remind myself to have an open mind and think positively and what are the benefits, and then have those open conversations with you, it's exciting, and it's has a positive effect on me to see how excited you are about some of these things.
I don't intend to stop.
No, I don't think you're going to stop anytime soon either. Okay. So this is sort of in a similar vein. I'm just looking for sort of action items maybe for parents, and this will be our final question here for the podcast. But what would you say to parents to help them feel more confident and informed about AI in their child's education? And maybe how can they be proactive? What kinds of things do you think they can do to ensure that their children are using AI responsibly?
I've made a kind of a how would you call it, like a goal or an objective to use AI every day, at least once somehow. And so, I'll write a big long email, and then it's like, you get Grammarly doing the checking, but it's like, I want the tone to be positive, or I want the tone to a vendor who's, not fulfilled their obligations to be stern, or to be demanding. And it's fun to just throw it in and see how it does. Or, I write something and I worry I might offend somebody. So it's like, can you make it so it's, I express my view and my disagreement, but, I don't want it to be offensive. And so and it's so interesting to see your own words, come back at you with just a little tweak. That's like, oh, it's really good. I like that. And again, I'll prompt it by saying, like, don't rewrite this thing. Don't make it all sycophant like ChatGPT does. And, it's trying to be too helpful. Like, I'll give it the tone that I want, correct the grammar, correct the spelling. And then the last sentence, I want to be positive. Like, that's it. And it's gotten much better at not meddling too much with your writing like that it was doing just last fall. So I think that's the sort of thing that, parents need to be doing themselves, arming them and equipping themselves to really see the potential of these things. And then they'll figure out how to guide their children, as we do in everything that we've experienced ourselves. But not knowing too often ends up being fear and that kind of, what do you call it, when people get
anxious,
too anxious and doomsdayish, Know what? I think.
Any suggestions for parents on what they should or can be doing to help their kids?
Keep encouraging them to explore these tools, because in the future they're going to need to be able to use these things effectively. So having them surrounded in it at an early age is probably a good thing. I think of the quote from Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental. Ask questions. Try to learn yourself. Don't chastise them for having ChatGPT open in the background, because it's going to end up being a good thing most likely overall.
All right. Well, we're going to end on that note because I love that. Let's stay curious, everyone.
Yeah.
So thanks so much, guys, for joining me today on the podcast.
Pleasure.
It's a great conversation, and I'm sure it's one that the three of us will be circling back around to often in the future as we explore these new tools together.
For sure.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. That was great.
Thank you.
What a great finish. Oh my God. Hit it out of the park, like Ted Lasso says.